along with you and engaging in a conversation on what should happen to our institutions. And so thank you for inviting me. I just want to put one thing, after I gave the title, I thought I should have said a few steps in that direction because we are very early stages of doing some interesting things, and we're very long ways to go in terms of being able to create really major impact. My talk is probably in two parts. One is to talk a little bit about some issues related to higher education, and especially those relate to learning. And the second is how we are trying to address them at Ahmedabad University. So let me get started on this one. The fact that university is a socio-cultural space is recognized. And it is recognized now in a very, even a stronger way, because the myth that online education is really the answer to education in the world seems to have been at least been put on hold for some time. Because when you talk to young people, all of them want to be back on campus. And it tells us a little bit about why these spaces are important. The question that I want to ask always myself is, are these socio-cultural spaces, which are defined by the university, are they also learning spaces? And is higher education salient to the lives of youth in the country? There are many, every now and then you'll hear that there's a Google that says you don't need higher education. If you're a good coder with no education, you should just come in. There's someone else who says, you can actually get in, collect a course here, course there, and over a period of time, you're a graduate. As if the degree starts to matter and not necessarily the ambience in which that learning seems to be happening. Now, it's also stemming from a fact that the sequence of learning in our large number of institutions is largely that you cram, you repeat, you cram, you regurgitate, you cram, and you forget. And that's really the sequence in which we learn, and that's why you ask kids maybe a week or 10 days or maybe a month after they finished a certain course, so which book did you use? And they would not know. What was the title? Ask 6 months later, what was the title of the course that you took? And they would not know, because they're largely involved in the day and the moment of trying to get on with whatever is being lectured to them, and then write an exam. So learning is happening for examination largely in most of our setting. And most people are relieved the day they graduate by feeling, okay, no more, I'm done. Okay, my education is done, now I'm going to kind of move on. And this is really the backdrop against which we are all trying to have a conversation of why, and of why learning is very crucial. So this talk is very much about learning. It was interesting. John Dewey, the famous educationist, once said, the education is not a preparation for life. Education is life itself. And it's very poignant, that statement. Education is life itself. So I'm just always wonder, can educational institutions not be life themselves? And what does that kind of idea mean? So that's really the basis of my talk. Now, I very strongly feel that poor education is no education at all. If we are poorly educated, irrespective of how prestigious an institution is, how bright you are, I think you've not received an education. And for that, I want to read out a page from my book. And you please, I hope you will permit me to do that and bear with me. It also talks about a little bit on the, gives a sense on the purpose of education. And it's on the Indian news media. So here is a page, and I start. One has to simply turn on the evening news in India these days to encounter the multifaceted elite of our country. Lawyers, journalists, civil servants, former defense professional, and now defense experts, beautiful people from film and television industry, sports persons, media persons, doctors, business executives, academics, writers, forecasters, and yes, even politicians. They are the aspirations of the society. They are dressed regionally, look sharp, and are trendy. They have opinions. They talk aloud. They shout at each other. They do not allow anyone to speak. They look menacing and are always smirking when others are speaking. They are repetitive. They borrow lots of ideas and terminology from each other. They are unable to hold an argument beyond a few sentences and are generally without correct or complete data. They rarely compliment each other or build on arguments of others, but they are very knowledgeable about a range of things like Higgs boson, supply chains, and even 3D printers, as they are about religion, regional economics, and urban planning. They love their cricket. They look quite affluent, or at least they speak like affluent people. They never take refuge in poetry and literature. They have never spit on the road, and they have never been troubled by the Indian male bladder problem. And what they say and do is always right. Empirically, those who shout louder are most knowledgeable and most righteous. And they all advise the prime minister. Well, giving wisdom to anyone else is below status. Oh, they also know rural India like the back of their hands, and they know all about the gay and lesbian and transgender communities. In short, they know everything. And that is why we must watch these superhuman prime times. Also, they happen to be the highly educated elite of India. That education has brought them to this venerable position is probably not to be doubted. Its impact, though, on how they think and what they say could be. In fact, watching these news debates and reading opinion pieces in various media makes one wonder, does education really matter? And I stop here. This is the backdrop of a scenario of our society. And this is just a slice. I'm not saying and generalizing this by any sense, but this is a visible slice of an educated society. Now, what does the current education system do today? It's actually making a technician out of a bright young person. That they get very good jobs is seen as a measure of their success, not only of their individual, but their parents, as well as of the institution. But think about it for a moment. If there's a company that has to hire, it has to hire largely from a local talent pool. So getting a job, is that the real success? It is indeed a purpose of education, but is this a real success of an individual or an institution? They're mostly narrow, they're very biased. It prepares opinionated people who are not facts, they regurgitate facts that are presented by others. They're very low on independent thinking, very self-obsessed, low value of the commons. And more importantly, as we are seeing in our country, most of our educated people have low respect for others who are different from themselves and their beliefs. There's someone who very interestingly said that, I respect the others who are different from me, simply because that's the only way I think others are going to respect me. And I think there's a lot of statement that is measured in there. And that's what is coming out to be an outcome of current education, which whose purpose is more than livelihood. Its purpose is also to make the citizen of a nation. Its purpose is also to be able to identify who is an inferno and who's not. And its purpose is also to be able to develop a love for lifelong learning. And that you see kind of missing from most of our educational institutions. And by the way, this is definitely true for India, but it may be true for many countries, including some that we admire. Now, I also want for a moment to mention to you that imagine for a moment, imagine that if all of us here on this talk are of the same height, suppose we all had the same features, all would eat the same food, all hear the same music, all had the same experiences, all would visit the same places, all study the same things, all would give the same response to the question on how do you feel today? How unhuman this world would be. And if there is intrinsic value in diversity, then why are our institutions not diverse? So that's a question I want to leave today. And that talks a little bit about the role of our institutions as universities versus standalone institutions. Many times I wondered that we have a university with multiple departments, multiple schools, but nobody talks to each other. And I wonder, why are all located there? Is it just because it's convenient for students to go? But then, they could be located in 4 different parts of the city, 4 different schools, and nothing would change forever unless ideas get changed. So institutions seem to have, in general, stopped playing a deep role in lives of its students. And worse still, I question, why did it stop mattering to society that we institutions are not being able to impact? When I look at, there's some noise coming from somewhere. I'm just wondering if it is.
Imtiaz, mute everybody.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just wondering, you look at larger society. The day their kids graduate from an institution, their engagement with that institution stops mattering. As if the society doesn't think that institutions are a very salient element in the making of this large society beyond just the world of teaching and learning of their own children. And I think it's a bothersome act. And hence, I want to raise this question that how does one recognize a poorly educated graduate? And many things that I've just commented reflect that, just being a great technical expert is not about education alone. And it's also bothersome that a large number of very bright people, and India is really blessed in that sense, that we are young, are very bright, are young, there's so many of them, that the potential to be able to convert them into citizens who matter, who can bring about change both in the society, in their own lives and lives of others around them. And somewhere that's not happening. And it is, in my mind, a way to identify who a poor graduate is. And perhaps that's a reason why the society wants, in the truest sense, as far as the intent is concerned, that it wants to educate itself. This great American writer and poet, Ralph Waldo Emerson, said something very, very interesting. He said, wisdom has its roots in goodness, not goodness its roots in wisdom. How powerful that the intrinsic value of human being resides in goodness. And through that goodness, only wisdom arises. And I feel many a times that that is why any society would want to educate its young and its children, that it embellishes, it strengthens the goodness in them through which wisdom arises. And that we've not cared to grow this goodness or grow this society with diversity, is really where the conflict is arising. And hence, education needs to be remade. And hence, higher education needs to be reimagined. And our universities have to be reimagined. So this is the backdrop against which I now would like to talk a little bit about the kind of experiments that we are doing. Enter, if you may, Ahmedabad University and experiments in remaking education. So, Ahmedabad, just to give a very brief introduction, Ahmedabad University is a private state-run non-profit institution in the city of Ahmedabad, and it's been set up by a very interesting trust called Ahmedabad Education Society, which was formed in 1930s at the behest of Sardar Patel by some of the tall nationalist leaders like Kasturbhai Lalbhai of Arvind, Ganesh Mavlankar, who was Speaker of First Lok Sabha, and many others who bought a large patch of land and wanted to set up colleges and institutions in the city of Ahmedabad. And in 1930s, there was only one college, Gujarat College, that was run by the colonial powers of that time. And rest of the kids who wanted graduate education had to actually go to Bombay University, because this Ahmedabad and Gujarat were part of Bombay Presidency. And since then, this trust has been responsible, very interestingly, for setting up of public institutions. So they've been directly and indirectly, through support and money and land, been responsible for establishment of Gujarat University, which is the public university of Gujarat. IIM Ahmedabad, Physical Research Laboratory, when Vikram Sarabhai wanted to set up an institution, and land and money went there. And when SAC and ISRO came to the city, and many other institutions, it played an indirect role in the setting up of National Institute of Design. Directly, it set up CEPT, the School of Planning and Architecture, LD College of Engineering for the government of Gujarat, and many institutions which were first of its kind. The first commerce college, called HL College of Commerce, was set up by the trust. LM College of Pharmacy, your first pharmacy institution, and LD Institute of Indology, a museum, and so on and so forth. And it's this trust which has now put together Ahmedabad University, which is perhaps its most ambitious project of trying to build a liberal education-driven research university. And I use these words very careful. I'm not saying liberal arts or liberal science, but I'm saying liberal education-driven research university. And so the purpose of Ahmedabad University is to continuously foster the growth of self and society. And there's a strong recognition that improvement of self and building that is essential for becoming a citizen of a nation. but at the same time, its contribution to society has deeper meanings and value both to everybody. Now, we realized this, by the way, this institution was set up 10 years ago, but it is still very nascent institution, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. But we realized very early on that there were several sources of disruption happening in the world. The first was technology, globalization, climate change, and urbanization. Technology, I don't have to say anything. I'm sitting with colleagues who know about the impact of technology and its extent much deeper than what I do. But one other thing that's happened is the globalization of the last 3 decades has changed very dramatically. And there appears to be another iron curtain that seems to be falling with the rise of China and the conflict of a set of nations, Iran, China, Russia, and related countries on one side, and many others on the other. And we don't know what is going to happen to very many multilateral organizations. And it has an impact on how societies turn out. Climate change, once again, I don't have to say anything. Most people believe Bill Gates has just written a book. Other day, I was hearing to a talk on our campus by Dr. Srinath Reddy, and he was saying essentially that we need to be very careful because the next pandemic may not turn out to be from the zoonotic variety, but from climate change. And the last is urbanization, which is kind of creating very new requirements in terms of safety, security, transport, health, how people live, how people move, food security, and everything related to it, with intense urbanization that's taking place around the world, but mostly in India. By 2090, it's expected that 9 out of 10 most populous cities would be in South Asia, and 6 would be from India. The most populous is going to be Lagos in Nigeria. So that's one. Now, question is, so that's one source of disruption. The second thing is there's also a realization that complex problems don't lend themselves to easy solutions from disciplines. I asked a bunch of my students this question, that which is one discipline that you can think of that can possibly be responsible for addressing the pandemic and the crisis today? And of course, in quite some right ways, they all said biology. But the question that we have to ask is, if biology had all the answers to solving the pandemic, we would have solved it. Simply because of the great biologists that exist around the world and in India. Addressing this challenge of pandemic requires not only biology, but knowledge of physics and electronics and mechanical engineering and logistics and supply chain. This vaccine development is one part. Its trials and management are very managerial. And more importantly, its distribution around the world is as complex as development of the vaccine. And it's a very major supply chain kind of a challenge. And so on and so forth, communications folks and sociologists and anthropologists. And so I think complex problems require knowledge systems from multiple disciplines. Now, the question that we ask ourselves is, how should universities respond to these big disruptions that are taking place? Do we continue to sit and do the way we've been doing? Do we continue to copy an IIT or an IIM or others in the way they have excelled, or at a Delhi university or a Bangalore university in the way they've excelled in the past? And my answer is, I think we need to think about these questions very differently. It's difficult for existing institutions to transform, but it is not impossible. There have been several examples around the world, and University of Singapore is a classic example of an institution that over the last probably 15 to 20 years has transformed from a very sleepy, below par teaching kind of a school into really a powerhouse that is addressing many of these challenges that the society and the world seem to be facing. So the question for me is, what should be the structure of a university that facilitates us to answer and find solutions to these challenges around us, that allow us to address the purposes of education? And how does, and then there's this great paradigm in economics called structure, conduct, performance, which says, unless you change the structure, you won't be able to change the behavior of people, and hence performance or outcomes won't occur. So structure, and structure in my mind is both governance as well as other related structures. The second is how do we learn to learn? I don't have a course that can teach how to learn. And that's what is needed. When uncertainty is very high about future, as it is because of this disruption, we don't know what is going to happen 6 months down the road. I mean, this is the most challenging thing. I mean, 2 years ago, if you had asked people, how long can you predict with surety, with certainty, they'll say, okay, I can tell you what's happening next month for sure. I can predict probably with 95% chance of what will happen 6 months down the road. Or maybe 5 years, my predictions and forecasts would be 50% correct. 15 years down the road, we don't. Today, I don't know if we can forecast what's happening the next 15 days. When the uncertainty is very high, the only way in which we can prepare our students very strongly is to provide them with an ability to actually learn how to learn, so that they can quickly adapt and react to changes that might be needed of them in times to come. The third, which means, is that we need to reimagine the classroom. And it's no longer the same story where somebody comes in with all the knowledge, distributes that knowledge. Others are very passive recipients, and we then educate for examination. So we teach them something, we give exams from the same something, and we grade that something, and the student goes away, I'm a topper, I'm the top for 5%, and everybody's very happy that we have very bright kids in this environment. And lastly, how do I modernize the society through production of knowledge? Other day I was hearing a job talk on our university by a historian who just finished his PhD at Columbia. And he was talking about the Marathi freedom movement and so on and so forth. And there was one very interesting thing he said about Lokman Tilak. And Tilak is as you all know, very controversial figure in the independence. He has all shades. And he said that Tilak wrote very strongly that the only way in which we can upgrade and modernize India and its traditional society is if we start to produce knowledge. And I thought, so poignant, so important a statement coming from a leader at that time. So we are, all these were running at the back of our mind when we started to redesign our educational environment here at Ahmedabad. And it would have been very easy. We are a young institution, very easy to copy a liberal arts college model of US, as many are doing in this country. It would be very easy to copy a good technical institution in India. But we may take much longer than them for a variety of reasons, but it would be easy because the models are in front of us. We chose a slightly difficult path. We said, we must experiment. We must build and find our own solutions, which are very contextual and grounded, and while learning from everybody, and see if we are able to mix and match. So what I'm going to talk, you will see many of the things that many of you may have done, but you will also see some new things that we have brought in to make education slightly different. If there's any clarification, please feel free to ask, or if you have a question, I'll be happy to answer now. Otherwise, we can do it at the end. So what has been our strategy? Our purpose was continuous progress of self and society. Now, coming from a management background, for me, it was very obvious that I have to, from that purpose or a vision, I need to derive a university strategy. From the university strategy, I need to derive an implementation plan. Then only this process of execution of an idea, of a vision, of a purpose would be possible. Otherwise, we'll be just running all over the place. And we came up with, and this was, by the way, collectively done through conversations across the university, not only with the students, small group of students, small group of administrators, and almost all faculty, and then finally put together by a team of about 10 odd deans and associate deans and others together. And we said that our strategy would be as follows. We picked up 5 principles. One was learning centricity. Let's try to focus on learning. And we asked this question to everybody. How do you know that your student has learned? And most answers were, well, I've given an exam, they've done well. Kids are not failing as much as they were doing. Now, is that a measure of learning? And in my mind, the answer is no. Answer is, if I'm able to understand complex things and I'm able to apply those complex things in an environment which I'm seeing for the first time, then I know that I have actually internalized or I have learned. And I'm able to connect many other things together. And I'll come to it in a minute, and how we went about then designing curriculum and syllabus. And we had, by the way, I will continue to say that if I have 12 steps to climb on this journey, we may be on step 3 or step 4. We have very long ways to go, but I think we know the pathway. There's no fog in front of us. We know the path that we're doing. It's a long driven path. It's a hard path, but I think we want to experiment going that way. The second thing was bring impact through interdisciplinary research. We realized very soon that one of the things that we had going for ourselves was we were a university. We had we had historians, and we had physicists, we had mechanical engineers, we had logistics folks, and we have political scientists. Now, I didn't have 30 mechanical engineers. I didn't have 40 electrical engineers and of high quality that an Institute of Science would have or an IIT have. I didn't have 30 production and quantitative methods folks like IIM Ahmedabad may have, or 20 historians as JNU may have. But I had actually some of the brightest ones around. And we felt that if we could address a complex challenge by leveraging all of this diversity together in addressing the challenge, then I think we would be able to do much more deeper things than the 40 in each of those departments could do. So we built for ourselves this impact through interdisciplinary research. And it needed, by the way, a fair bit of operational tasks before it can happen. It's not easily done, because naturally after doing a PhD, we are 1 mile deep and maybe half an inch wide. So we are deep in our own expertise. But how do you make that depth, my depth and your depth and someone else's depth, come together to create a solution which requires all 3 of us to look at it from our angles? The third was the congregation of the meritorious. We decided that we are going to bring in very high quality faculty. And we will not hire if we don't get high quality people. We will be very slow and deliberate in putting an institution together. We're not in a hurry at all in any which way. Now, these are all, as you all know, statements to be taken in light of the demand and supply situation. Supply in India is not the most free flowing, but nevertheless, given that we decided that we will, and this congregation of the meritorious did not stay till faculty alone, but it had to be amongst the administrators as well. And I'll tell you why. We realized that in most of our institutions in India and many globally, faculty, which is really a bottleneck, this is the most precious resource. And we actually load onto this faculty many administrative roles, some which nobody else can do but a faculty. And I see that point, and I'm not talking about those roles where the faculty can add far more value than anybody else. But there are many things that can be done by others and take that load off the faculty. And we started to hire such administrative people from industry. And people who understood the ethos. So I, for instance, got a head of operations who took care of many of the campus and many things to come from a hotel industry. This was an idea given to me when I was at IIM Bangalore by Professor Mr. K.L. Chugh, who was a former chairman of ITC. And he kept telling me, why don't you hire somebody from a hotel industry who is very hospitality driven, who understands people and needs of customers very well. And I felt that if I get such a person, they'll be able to serve the needs of my faculty and students much better. And last was experimentation. I like the statement that one of our leaders of a partner institution from whom we've learned a lot, Olin College of Engineering, for which we are the only partners in India. Olin's president, Rick Miller, would say something very interesting. And I think he probably didn't mean it literally, but there was something to it. And he said, we should all have around ourselves an expiry date. And I read it as saying, every time we conduct an experiment and we succeed, we should actually embark on another experiment to essentially break down what we've just achieved and build something even better. And it's this experimentation mindset which is very crucial to vibrancy of an academic institution, which has again been a very major challenge in India especially, but also in many parts around the world. So these are 5 big pillars that formed our intrinsic thinking around the strategy for building the university. Now, we are currently 4 schools. We have a School of Management, School of Computer Studies that we are transforming into an Institute of Mathematics and Theoretical Computer Science, a School of Engineering and Applied Science, a small one, and a School of Arts and Sciences, which is really central to our mission. So the way we see it is at the center is our School of Arts and Science, and around it is our professions. And the professions get fed by the School of Arts and Science, and the arts and science and humanities get fed by the profession, so as to make sure that a kid who comes to do history can also aspire to become a banker or aspire to work in an IT company and so on and so forth. And we have a fair bit of divisions of humanities and languages. We may be developing perhaps in India one of the most extensive language programs. And our hope is that the language program, today we have about 7 or 8 languages that we deal with, starting with Pali, Prakrit, Brahmi, in small ways for research, Sanskrit, Persian, Urdu, then French, German, and Dutch, and Japanese. And now we're going to we're setting up a translation center with Tamil, Telugu, Gujarati, Hindi, Bengali, and many other, Marathi, and many others. So as we go along, I think we will, and naturally it will lead to moving into into computer science, into linguistics, and so on from there on. We have division of social sciences, which has anthropology, sociology, and we didn't separate them out. One of the things that we did is we decided to get rid of departments. Across the university, we don't have departments. We made sure that there are no silos, and schools are also very porous. Somebody, and this is what happens on quite some basis. There's always a case where after 20 years, a professor of physics suddenly loses interest in doing research in physics, but has been a very good physicist and wants to do more of a quantitative finance, but has no opportunity to do so. So our porosity allows this faculty to move on into a school of management and do things there. Our students take courses all across, and I'll talk more about it. And our faculty teach across different schools in very interesting ways. And now we're putting together a School of Public Health. There are 4 centers of excellence that we have, as 5 of them, sorry. And we just put a 5th one this month. Center for Heritage Man. This is a very unique center that actually looks at organizations that will protect and build around tangible and intangible heritage. There's a Center for Learning Futures that works on digital humanities. It also does work on translation, as well as doing the Reading and Writing Center of the university. We have a Global Center on Environment and Energy, which is where the IPCC's technical division on mitigation resides, an incubator, a Center for Inter-Asia Research, and now we are building a Center for New Manufacturing. Gujarat is a very manufacturing-centric place, and in quite some ways, the IT revolution bypassed it. But with Industry 4.0, IoT, sensors, and many other things, I think there's a very interesting movement in that direction. And we feel we can do some interesting research around it. We have close to 3,000, we're a small school, 3,500 students, 150 full-time faculty, another 100 who visit us from around the world. Our faculty come with degrees from some of the best institutions in India and around the world. We have Indians, non-Indians, and our students are today about 60% from Western India, 40% from 22 other states, but that number is increasing. And I think in about 3 years of time, we'll be a purely national institution. We also have about, I think 75, maybe even 80% of our students today are undergrad, 20% graduate, and most of them at PhD level. We have a very small master's program. And we are moving in 5 years to be about 50% or 60% undergrad and 40% graduate. So that's the structure that we're working with. Now, we started with those strategies that I mentioned to you, the 5 strategies. We started defining ways of learning for ourselves. So how do students learn? And we picked up 4. There are many ways, but we picked up 4 ways of learning. Ways of thinking, which is what we normally do: lecturing, reading, writing, solving problems, doing assignments, doing exams, and then that's a very valid way. But we also found that complex problems required connecting knowledge systems from very different ways. And we had to build that into our teaching and learning programs, into our coursework, and into the way we constructed courses. You ask a kid from class 12, so you have taken physics and you've taken chemistry. What do you see them as? How do you see them together? Say, oh, well, they're 2 different subjects. There's no connect that you see between a biology and a physics. Very few kids at that time see it. But the fact remains that you can't do good biology today without physics, without chemistry, without computer science, without math. And I think this connecting the dots is very crucial to be able to do things. The third thing we felt was doing is learning. And hence we have to put ways of doing into a curriculum. And last is ways of becoming. We we're not the kind of institution that tells people that you need to be good, you need to take care of the underserved, but we are a kind of institution that actually places students in such situations where they will appreciate and realize for themselves that they need to be empathetic towards those who are underserved, who are underprivileged, that they need to be compassionate, that they need to give their time. And we have a program that makes all of them do that. So the characteristics of Ahmedabad education that we've built, and we now have a couple of cohorts that have gone through, where each year we are kind of fine tuning, building, improving, becoming better ourselves in what we do, is one, to make the deep deeper by integrating the breadth. And this is, in our mind, the essence of interdisciplinarity. You know, most people around the world say that they're interdisciplinary, and their interdisciplinarity means that you take a course, if you're an engineer or a science, go take a course in humanities, take one course in social science, take one course in performing arts or something like that. This happens in India and this happens around the world. That you take the breadth in buckets. Now, what it does is it makes you broad, no doubt about it, but it does not integrate the breadth, because integration of the breadth is left for the student to happen, and maybe just about 10 to 20% of them are able to do. Now, if I'm able to integrate this breadth, then I'm able to connect the dots. And if I'm able to connect the dots, then the deep work that I'm doing in quantum physics becomes even more questioning and deeper. That's the whole idea. So our programs are, we built in our programs phenomenal interdisciplinarity. It's not unusual to see a professor of history and a professor of physics to come into the same classroom. It's not unusual to see a professor of biology and a professor of logistics or data science to come together in a classroom. And we are slowly trying to build coursework and new sets of courses which actually cross the boundaries of disciplines, where multiple people can come in. So we did a course, for instance, we used to have a course on sound and acoustics, and we changed it into a course called the Science of Building Musical Instrument. And here is a professor of music and a professor of computer science and a mechanical engineer. Three of them come together to teach this course. And it is a doing oriented course. The whole course is a project, but they're actually solving problems in the real environment. They're not doing 50 problems as assignment every week, where we know 2 kids do it and 48 of them cheat and copy. But they're all engaging to say, how can I build a guitar? And then I have to go solve, really understand what is resonance, understand many other aspects of acoustics, solve equations and learn some theory, apply it, make sure it doesn't work, build some heuristics around it. And we found that it stays with them. Kids are motivated because the challenge is real to them. They are engaged because they're motivated. And once they're engaged, hence they learn. That's our linear model that we have created for ourselves. And doing assist them. I've seen kids, and you may have seen that whenever you've done experiments of that kind too, the kids will come at 7 in the morning and they won't want to go back home because they're so engrossed and they're enjoying what they're doing. And the last bit that we are trying to build in all our courses is research thinking. And by that, we mean learning methods of research, learning tools, but more importantly, learning to ask questions. And while, again, we don't have a mechanism to teach them how to ask the right question, but our belief is if most of our courses are such that you can engage them into asking questions and answer them in that manner, they will themselves, many of them will lead to find a way where they can ask the right question. We're also very flexible. As an institution, kids come in, they change their major, they move in. So, I mean, we admit students to the university and not to a program and not to a major. So they will go and move around And they take courses. Every course is open to everybody if you have the right prerequisite. And so kids, and we've also created kind of spaces in the curriculum where kids can take courses which are very difficult, but they are very curious about it. And so though that helps them. I think we may have built a very transformative curriculum. We've had two cohorts. We've not graduated anybody yet, but we have two cohorts that have run through 2 years of the program. And we've seen and measured transformation. We are running a 4-year experiment, and we're collecting data across 1,000 students. We are following a batch that entered in 2019, and we're following them for 4 years, and measuring everything around them, and quantitatively, qualitatively. And in 4 years, we hope to have answers in terms of what worked, what didn't work, what connections did we want to make, did it happen, did it not happen. But anecdotally, seeing them, I'm a faculty mentor to 15 kids, and I've been with them for 2 years, and I've seen them transform. Part of it is, of course, the age. They will transform, but I think I've seen them on day one, and what I see them today, I think they are different kids. And our curriculum has some role to play, if not all, in that. Now, what is our curriculum like? We have a signature common core, which we call a foundation program. This is done by everybody. So 1,000 students we admit, and there are 100 people involved, about 60 faculty, 40 TAs who teach in the foundation program. And all the kids from all, whether you're an engineer, a music major, or whether you're a historian or a manager or whatever, all of them are mixed together. And this common core is very, very unusual. And it's very, it's taken us 4 years to execute it. And there's still lots of changes that we're making, but I think we're on to something very exciting and worthwhile. We asked ourselves this question: what are 6 and 7 things that every Ahmedabad University student should learn? Where is it that we want them to engage with? And we came up with 2 areas that are skill oriented, 2 areas that build perspective, and 2 areas of innovation. And these are the 6 domains. We said communication and data science are skills. Behavior, constitution, and civilization. Behavior is, why does the society behave in the way it does? Why do I behave differently from you? And constitution and civilization. And then 2 areas of innovation, where innovation is happening: biology and life, and new materials. And biology is, this is the century of biology. And these are 6 domains. So everybody learns about data science, how to organize data, what is data, data visualization, GIS mapping, Python programming, statistics, and so on and so forth, irrespective of whether you've come to study history or you have come to do electrical engineering. Now, we realized that if we start teaching them a course called data science, bit we could do there. So we said we won't teach them as independent courses, but teach them through 4 studios. And so what happens is that the student, when they come in, we want to make them unlearn the way they have learned until class 12th. And they need to learn very differently. And what we do was that we put them in a studio. We take a year and we bookend the year, 2 at the beginning of the year, 2 at the end of the year. And a studio is literally a room in which they go for 1 month to study one topic. And any point of time, it's a 4-week studio, and each week is very well curated. In the morning, you have faculty doing discussions. In the afternoon, they do activities and build things. And you have 2 faculty and 2 TAs in a classroom all the time. And these studios were democracy and justice, on environment and climate change, neighborhoods, which is a proxy for urbanization and water. And these are the 4 big challenges that the society is facing. So our purpose was, let's pose to these 17-year-olds coming to us the biggest challenge that society faces. And there are many others. Tomorrow we'll change one of them, bring health, transportation, and people can choose very differently. And make them engage with those issues. That creates the motivation. And once they're motivated, we build interdisciplinary learning where they get to see a problem in very many different hues and shades. So they learn communication, data science, behavior, constitution, biology through water. And I'll give you an example of what they'll do. So they, very first day, they all go collect water samples from different wards of the city. They'll come back and build an instrument and dealing with materials on and biology on what is water quality. And they get a small short workshop and a lecture around it. Then they plot a GIS map, which they're learning through the data science kind of segment. And they actually plot the quality of the wards. Once they do that, they find out that, oh, these 2 wards actually have very poor quality. Then a next element kicks in and they say, okay, let me go find out who lives there. So they learn about sampling and they do create a questionnaire, and all within, by the way, the first month of their arrival at a university. And they'll go collect some data. So and come back and say, oh my God, this is where this person, this kind of people with this background live. Who stands in the line for water? And then say, well, it's a girl child. Now, what does a constitution tell us about water and about the girl child? So what you're doing is you're actually integrating the questions from different disciplinary point of views. And that's how you're building, connecting the dots. You're building ways to do, ways to think, and you're building interdisciplinary learning by doing, and you're asking questions. So this is a very, very transformative, powerful way that we find in which we bring. Now, this is not meant to build depth. This is meant to ask them questions, to learn how to learn, part of it. Then on the foundation, then we do breadth. So this is general education requirement. So every student takes courses around humanities and social sciences and performing and visual art and technology and professions. We have general engineering, general management, and many other courses that they kind of take. And they spread it out. It's not as if you first do the foundation, then you do general education, then you do your specialization. No, they're doing many of them these things together. And then they have a majors, and major is a specialization. So history is a major, finance is a major, mechanical engineering is a major. Then they do large number of 20 to 25 courses in the major, including the school course. Now here also we've actually done phenomenal amount of interdisciplinarity doing and research thinking. Almost all our programs have a school core. In engineering, for instance, we have an engineering foundation program as part of our liberal tech approach to engineering education. And that engineering foundation is actually built around hands-on activity of 20 credits. And the kids take courses and workshops around thermodynamics, introduction to fundamentals of algorithms and programming, around signals and processing, around circuits, around thermodynamics, around visualization, around manufacturing and realization, and so on and so forth. So everyone, irrespective of what discipline or branch you come in, we find that there's certain things that everybody should know, irrespective of whether you become a theoretician or a practitioner or whatever you do in between. And so this is an absolutely amazing bit of foundation that we do. Then we have minors. So kids come in and they'll do a major in computer science and minor in history. And I joke around that, in my generation, and many of the senior colleagues who are here, your first degree was for your parents, the second was for livelihood, and the third was for the soul. And now we are trying to actually build all three of them together by saying, you want to study philosophy and you want to study mechanical engineering, please do that. Lots of our kids, for instance, come and do a BA in psychology, a major in psychology, and a minor in biology. Lots of kids are doing that. And very interestingly, we have kids who come from family business backgrounds, do a major in biology and a minor in cost accounting. So these are ways in which you can build skills in people, and at the same point of time, make humanities that much more skill driven. And then we have a mandatory volunteerism. It's an anachronism in many ways, but mandatory required volunteerism with in slums, in hospitals, and with police, just to develop a sense who is the other with whom I never engage. And these are kids, many of them would have never stepped into a slum or never, I've never met a policeman and seen how tough their life is until unless they stand and as part of that entire team. So this is the whole intent of Ahmedabad education, which is helping actually create, first and foremost, a better individual, a better citizen, a better thinking person who's very articulate. We also have, by the way, in communication, writing requirement. You have to pass, you have to take 4 courses, and if you don't pass a writing requirement, you don't graduate. So we work with them individually because we want them to be able to communicate their ideas very well and apply knowledge that they have acquired through a variety of different disciplines in solving complex challenges, and hopefully becoming both a better citizen, more innovative, develop a love for learning, whichever way that one wants to do. Now, what's the context? Sorry. Yeah. One other thing I want to also say is we also realized that for most of us, content was the king when we were learning. If you knew the content, things were well, and the faculty were very, very charged with the content, very charged with making sure that the course content get completed, the topics got done. We just kind of broke that one, and we said pedagogy is as important as content, and at times maybe even more. What you learn is more important. How you learn is more important than what you learn many a times. Because if you know the whole process of learning and how you can activate it, then you will be able to learn all your life. And for that, we've done many things that we do. Internships are mandatory, like many other schools. We have capstone projects, which are real projects that we bring, which are multidisciplinary and multi-school in nature. We have a period called Independent Study Period in December, where we build short courses that are around practice-oriented, project-based, where short course and which are theory-driven, but also in passion. So the course that I mentioned about the science of building musical instrument actually got started off as an independent study period course and then became a semester-long course. Then we also are building independent mindedness through a platform that we have called Nalanda, where we've actually broken that system whereby we get a speaker to come and speak to large audience, because we realize that most of the kids are sleeping, their mind is not there. So we've broken that, and we bring in now people, very deep thinkers, to talk to our students in smaller groups. So and then we've developed a kind of a framework of a pedagogy ourselves, which is engagement and action based learning, and which brings in elements of interdisciplinarity, elements of project-based learning and doing. And we've created a framework around it. We have training programs for our faculty that we run through very regularly. We get speakers from all over the place to come and talk to us as part of it. Professor Shadgopan has talked to our faculty in that same forum on certain aspects. Sometimes we will do a small workshop around assessment, group assessment, and so on and so forth. So it builds into this framework that we have of enabled pedagogy, through which we're doing this different kind of teaching. Now, what does such an educational institution require? I'll take another 5-7 minutes. Professor Murthy, how much time do I have? Should I stop, or? I think
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. No problem. No issue.
Okay.
Very interesting.
What does such an education or educational institution require? And I believe that it requires a very expansive vision, a vision which is not for today, a vision which is for larger period, a vision that encompasses those who are very bright and those who are slightly less bright, a vision that encompasses bringing many disciplines together. The second is this engagement with the city and the matter, which is many times in tradition of education literature called the town in the gown. How do you engage with the city as a learning laboratory? We are very fortunate that we are located in the middle of the city, and we use it to our hilt. Our campus is also very open campus. People come in and go out, and we use the city and the area around a lot as a learning laboratory for us to do things. The third is governance, and I think this is a very crucial part of it. We've structured the university very different. As a university, it's a very flat, decentralized kind of a structure. And the schools are important elements. They have the P&L, they make their own decisions, but at the same time, we prepare an integrated plan across different schools and the university together. So all the deans and myself and other senior colleagues, we all sit down and integrate it so that it creates an aligned process. And as I mentioned to you, that's a part of collective decision making. As I mentioned to you, we don't have departments, and we have very porous schools. I must also say something about the autonomy and the board. This has been a very major problem in Indian institutions. And a large number of members of the board, especially those that come from industry, and this is without prejudice to anybody, and this is just a general comment I'm making, do not have a very nuanced understanding of how to work, enable an institution. They understand the word autonomy, but somewhere or the other, I think they don't understand that they have to have the ears in and hands out. And the more the board has the hands in, the more destructive becomes the educational process. And same is true for the leadership. Many VCs also think that autonomy should be for them, but not for faculty. So unless, and those institutions in our country, and I've been on board of several institutions, including IIITB, and I've learned many things from there, and seeing them how faculty are enabled by an engaged leader and an engaged board in quite some ways. And I'm very fortunate to have a board of that kind, who have been on boards of other academic institutions, who understand what is their role, where they should say, and where they should stop, and where they should leave the decision making to the leadership and to the faculty. And it's a very important part of it. I can elaborate it at some other time in more greater depth, but it is a very important element which allows experimentation, because as you will appreciate, experimentation involves failure. When you experiment, half of the time, if not more, and definitely more, things don't work. But it also allows us to change and move. And faculty needs to have the space and understand that their innovation is respected, and that they have been given time to do that. And that's the next part of it, that we're building a serious academic center. We are identifying in the process, we've identified some, but we're in the process of identifying interdisciplinary research clusters for the university. So individuals can do whatever they want to do, for sure, but at the same time, the university has an agenda that it will involve. So for instance, one of the things that we have chosen is cities, health, and climate change as one unifying agenda across the university. And we've developed a PhD program around it. We have developed courses around it. We are now have some projects that are interdisciplinary in nature that have started. It'll take a few more years. So it's that manner. We are one of the few institutions in the country that also have adopted a 6-year tenure system. It's a slightly different from a up and out kind of system of the US because of many reasons. But we feel that it's important for us because 6 years is important for people to build habit of working and doing research lifelong or for long periods of time. And then we've created time for people to innovate. It's very crucial. Many of the suggestions of UGC around number of hours per week of teaching, I think, leaves no time to people to think either on teaching or their own research. So we provide that kind of space. We're very diverse and increasingly becoming more diverse. We are far more diverse on our faculty body for sure. We have a very national or international character to the faculty body. And we're fast becoming a very national institution in our on our student body as well. We also felt that Indian institutions do not pay adequate attention to student experience and their engagement, because a lot of learning continues outside the class. Many other aspects of personality development, their beliefs, their leadership, other things happen that way. Now, things happen in every institution, but it needs to be curated, and you curate it very carefully. Now, as you can imagine, it requires lots of resources. So we have faculty that is globally attractive. We are also building with young faculty. We've resisted the temptation, and I have seen that in several institutions in India who have done this in the past, and that's where I have learned that we decided we must build our own unique culture. And we're building this institution for the young people. So 80% of our hiring happens at fresh PhD level, who we promote, and a few experienced mentors. Now, what does that mean? It means that I, as an institution, won't create a very big splash tomorrow because XYZ is joining my institution, but that's all right. And we are in there for a long run and not for the next 5 years of my tenure or anyone else's tenure for that matter. We're building the foundation of an institution which will last in a very robust way for a long period of time. Now, a part of the culture that we are trying to build, and this is also work in progress, is one of ownership and collaboration. It doesn't come easily to us Indians. And we do not want to necessarily collaborate very easily. But we have several incentive structures that we've put in place and ways in which we connect faculty, one faculty to another, to make them teach together, to make them do research together. And we are at early stages on this one, I must say. Now, it also needs several processes that help you innovate, several administrative processes that make life a little bit simple, very teaching and learning methods that are effective, and as mentioned, integrate the 4 ways of learning. It also requires resources, financial resources, to attract the best faculty, to support student aspirations, because students want to do things. They want to run a project, they want to do a big hackathon, they want to build a car, they want to build this, and we need to have resources And we also are very, very diverse institution in terms of support. We, like many of us here on this call, our institution, we also provide fair bit of financial aid, but we also consciously bring in first-time learners. So about 12% of our student body is first-time learners. These are people whose parents have not gone to college or school many times. As I said earlier, we have a center of city campus, which is it's a very modern campus, but a very simple campus, which actually matches our academic aspirations. And it also acts as a laboratory for us. And this reimagining requires, in summary, competence, attitude, high expectation, and belief, and imaginative experimentation from all of us, from students, from faculty, from staff, administrative staff, giving them the space and respect also, to do interesting and new things. And if we do this, we feel that we would be on our way to creating a really new generation of institutions. We are trying to remake education, which will help remake the society. So this is a journey. And as I said earlier, that we are at very early stage of this journey, but I've outlined for you what has been running at the back of our mind, things that we've done. And I think we are very happy with the kind of progress that we've made, but we have very long ways to go. So thank you very much. I'll stop here and be very happy to take your comments or answer any questions that you might have.
Sanjay sir, would you please take on? Dr. Sanjay Chitnis, could you please take on the questions?
Unmute yourself. Unmute.
Okay, so the bunch of, if you want, I can read out from the
yes, unmute, sir. Sanjay, please unmute.
I can.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was not able to unmute. Now I think I have been made co-host, so I can unmute. So thank you, sir. Very truly thought-provoking talk. I'm sure that's why the questions have started flowing. So I will start reading the question one by one and requesting you to take them one by one. So the first question is from Professor Girish. He's asking, sir, how is liberal study approach different from traditional degree program?
So there are two things. What is a traditional degree? Traditional degree is where you segregate by discipline very early on. After class 12th, you've actually put a person in physics, chemistry, math, or physics, chemistry, biology, or humanities and social sciences. And then when you go into college, you once again actually stream them very narrowly. And if you've come to study a BSc in physics, probably 90% of your courses are in physics, maybe some math here and there and some sprinkling of other science. That is a traditional education. One. Second, a traditional education is where a teacher comes, teaches, you listen, you understand, you read, and you go and write an exam. You learn theory and then you go and do a practical. Now the new educational experiments are slightly different, which says that we need to learn many things in order to be one. And why? Because of these complex challenges that are facing. So whether it's healthcare or whether it's climate change, whether it's transportation, you need to look at a problem in a more holistic manner. And hence you need to learn with others and you need to learn other things and connect the dots. And then you construct a curriculum, you construct courses where you take courses across, you take interdisciplinary courses and so on and so forth. That's broadly an approach to liberal education. I hope I've answered that question of yours, but if you have anything else, I'll answer. I can read that. I can read the next one if you want.
Sure, sir. I can read out quickly. So next question is from Dr. Monali Mawani, and she's probably worried about the impact of that. So dear sir, parents in India look for the placement scenario in Indian universities, including all premier universities. So same is not true for some other premier universities like Stanford, MIT, etc. Can Indian universities bridge that gap, and how can it be achieved?
Well, I think Indian parents are one of the most anxious parents in the world. If the kid gets an A, the parents think that they have a genius in their home. If the kid gets a D, they think they have a dumbass in their home. And both are not true. Both are not true. And I think Indian parents need to be counseled psychologically to actually have faith in their children and faith in the system. It's much more that problem than anything else. There are many Indian institutions that are very good. There are many Indian educators who are very good. Indian scientists, many of them who are very good. And I think you get very good education in many institutions in the country. And I think universities can do less. Society needs to do more in terms of counseling parents to let their kids choose what they want to do. They are the ones who choose for their kids. And it becomes a very massive problem for the kid, and then that's why I said, first degree is for the parents, and the second is for the job, and the third for the soul. And actually the first degree should be the soul. Leave the kid to find out what they want to do, and they will do their best. If they love history, they'll actually make life. Today a historian finds job, by the way, from ranging from an anthropologist find job in ad agencies, in consumer goods company, in IT. I mean, every corporation in the world hires people of that kind, in addition to academia elsewhere. So that's my response on that question. Okay, the third question is from Srinivas, which says there's a notion that micro-systemic changes are mistaken for innovation in transforming the education space. Could you please offer? I'm not worried too much about it, so long as there's change that is happening. If even many small changes can lead to a changed institution in due course. Academic institutions are like large ships. They take a lot of time to turn, and change making is not very easy. Many times I feel we got lucky because we're a young institution, but large institutions also change by making those small changes. So long as we keep changing, everybody keeps changing, every department keeps changing, every curriculum keeps changing, in a few years of time you would have changed everything. And if we are responsive to the requirements of the world outside, I think we'll be okay. Then Yogesh Deshpande says, are statutory bodies really taking higher education to higher level? AICTE, law. You don't get me started on that one. You will be sitting here without lunch, without dinner, so less said about these guys, the better. The only thing I want to say, I believe universities or educational institutions are self-correcting entities. They don't require a regulator to correct them. And we've seen how a regulator for last 70 years has made us in horrible shape. So maybe my hope is next 70 years, if the regulator goes on a vacation, we'll not do worse than what we've done in last 70 years. Okay. So I don't want a regulator. Then there's a question from Dr. Prakash. What are the interventions that you've planned after rolling of the new education policy? How is liberal arts embedded in your engineering curriculum? So, we feel that we are ahead of the NEP on many things.
Correct.
I think we've probably, on many things, maybe 2/3 of the things that NEP talks about, I think we already have executed, experimented, implemented in place. Now, how do you embed it in your engineering? Yeah, so we call our engineering program as liberal tech. And we believe that three things, it's something, also understands when it is feasible, and then develops solutions around it. So first, our engineering education is very problem driven. It's not engineering science that we are looking at, but we're looking at doing engineering. And close to 40% of the coursework that engineers do is outside of engineering. So they go through our foundation program, they go through our general education, and they love it. They are able, when they do their BTech projects, they're actually able to bring in aspects of cost accounting, and a course that they may have taken to essentially do some accounting and financial economic analysis of a product or a process that they may have developed. So that's how we are kind of doing it. We are also creating projects where capstone projects where students from our other schools join the engineers on the same project. So engineers are doing so this conversation allows them to build liberal arts kind of grounding in their life. Another question from Dr. Prakash was, I understand that you've introduced student profiling to track their transformation. What are the characteristic measures you've introduced to bring qualitative improvement? So, we've done it a little bit differently. We listed out about 12 or so characteristics that we want people to build upon. So independent mindedness, lack of bias, critical thinking, analytical thinking, and so on and so forth. Now, I have no measure which says that on a scale of something 9 is very good or 8 is bad. So what we've developed a Likert scale, but we are seeing change on each one of them over a period of time. So our instrument has many situations, and the student addresses that situation. And while addressing it, they answer a set of questions through which we judge whether how biased their response is, how independent minded they are. And then we evaluate them. And we are seeing that over a period of time, on an average, does the class performance change or not? That's what we are doing as of now. School for Learning of Futures. Okay, it's a Center for Learning Futures. It's called CLEF, Center for Learning Futures, which we talk about the future of learning. We do a lot of experiments actually around teaching and learning at this center. So this is a reading and writing center for us that runs writing programs. This is a center that does research on digital humanities. This is a center that does work on logic and formalism. This is also a center where we run a writing workshop. So kids that are not able to write properly, or we bring them one-on-one. This is also a center which does experiments with various kinds of pedagogies. Should universities with schools in your neighborhood and make sure, or in the cities, make sure that they are actually taught differently? But the problem is, there are many schools. I think there are better schools than better universities in this country. And the unlearning will happen only when the boards changes. I have a very strong feeling that this way of teaching and learning is driven by examination. And that's why you see kids in IB board or Cambridge board and others who actually talk differently, who think differently, because the examination system is a little bit different. So the need would be to change the examination system. Professor Banga says, what were the strategies you adopted to prepare and motivate the faculty in your transformation? Yeah, I think it's a very important question. And so we came in, we had close to about 70 or 80 faculty, and we grew them to 150. We realized that we had very good teachers, and we started a teaching track for faculty. And we went through lots of workshops around this new pedagogy in a very participative kind of manner. Second, when we started to hire faculty, we looked for people who are willing to do interdisciplinary teaching and our kind of way of thinking. Some would say, no, this is not my style, and say, well, thank you very much. We're not the right institution for you. So we did that. And then our foundation program has been actually the biggest learning point, because 80 faculties, as I mentioned earlier, came together. And these are people so the water studio, for instance, was designed by 6 faculty. One was a hydrologist, another one was a biologist, the third was a gender person, fourth is a political economy person, fifth is a communication guy, and then one more person, I think a data scientist. And these are people who brought questions from their own vantage point. And people started to see things together. And they started to enjoy. And we've now seen, after 2 years, 1 or 2 interdisciplinary research projects also arise. So one is really supporting faculty through workshops and having a common purpose and a goal. Generally doing workshops, you get bored. But if there's a purpose, there's a very well-defined. So somebody says, I'm doing this course together. I have group projects, and across 3 different disciplines, there are engineers and there are management folks and others in the same class. I don't know how to evaluate them. So we set up a small workshop, brought in faculty, sometimes brought in people from outside to think through with us, how do we evaluate a class which is very diverse? So if the workshops are very purposeful, so slowly everybody started to buy in. Then we actually also brought incentive structures in place. So people who were doing interdisciplinary work were given funds to do more experiments. We brought it into our annual evaluation also. We started asking questions. So what kind of work have you done with others, and what work have you done in other school? Do you partner with someone to teach? And you started rewarding a little bit in a small way people who are doing it. So all of this kind of signaled a certain kind of an alignment. But this is the most difficult and a challenging question. And I don't think our work will ever be complete on this one. There are always people who will have their own better ways, and that's fine too. Then a question from Yogesh Deshpande. Accreditations have become more documentation centric. What's your opinion? Yeah, I'm actually very worried about that part. Not only document centric, I think they are, I'm probably between academics, so I can use that word, but they're very silly in terms of the kind of information. Nobody bothers to understand student learning. Well, they all want to ask how many days, what is the number of students who have attended class or not attended class. They don't bother what they are doing, what kind of job they are doing, whether they found a job or not found a job. I think that somewhere our assessment needs to move towards qualitative, substantive values. And some of the global, by the way, accreditation are like that. They'll come to you, they'll work with you for a few years, and they'll say, you define your objective, what kind of institution you are, and then let's see if you are able to achieve your own objectives that you've set out for yourself. If you have, then you are accredited. Indian institutions, our accreditation system wants to make everybody look alike. Everybody. So I need to also have a rooftop solar plant, and I need to have this, and I need to have a one bus, and I need to have 3 water fountains, and I need to have 4 of this, and I need to have 7 of this. I think it's crazy. It's just crazy. When when accreditation should be judged more by what an institution wants, then only the institution will be rewarded by accreditation for their experiments. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure the accreditation folks have their own set of stories to tell about universities and how the universities cheat and so on and so forth. So I will not say anything more than that. Yogesh Kalegoda says, is there any system or tool you have developed to measure the learning ability of students from the date of joining? No, we don't have any tool. I think we are very qualitative in that nature. And we feel that if the faculty is reading essays and are looking at projects being completed, and over time, if they are getting enhanced and improved, that's a good enough indicator for us. Then Girish asked, could you tell us the assessment methods adopted in your university? Yeah, so we have as many assessment methods as there are faculty. So every faculty chooses their own assessment method, and some give assignments and exams, and some give projects. Some give a combination of them. Some do a lot of viva voces. Some evaluate on group projects. Some evaluate individual projects. So I think everything under the sun is there. Lots of people do take home exams and take home assignments. So those are, everybody is experimenting on that count. Then Ram Kumar Bomisetti says, how was the acceptance by students and their parents? Well, the students accept it like fish to water. They love it. The parents always tell me, are you teaching all these other things? I hope they're learning mechanical engineering also. So the parents are so old fashioned, like all of us, I guess, but they're more concerned. Okay, this history, geography, why do you want to learn that? Just make sure that you learn computer science, get a job in Amazon, and you're out. My responsibility is over. But the kids love it. By the way, there's a small percentage of kids who also don't like it. I have to say that, because they come with a certain mindset. Say, they keep telling me, oh, my friends in some other institution are not doing this. They are doing more of computer science and engineering. Why aren't you doing it? So my response after a while, after I get more exasperated, is, why don't you go and join your friend in that college, and rather than being here? But we live with it. The kids like it. By the way, first semester and the first studio, there's a revolt. The people don't like it because it's great unlearning process. They're getting people are finding that they're not good at everything. And those who thought they were not good at some things in school, who have scored less marks, actually here, maybe on some other things, they're looking very good. So it's really adjustment that it takes place, and it takes some time for them to understand what is happening. By the time they do the third studio, they are all ready and flying, and they understand it. And we do an expo. At the end of the studio, we do an expo, and we call the parents. And then the parents come and see their kids' work. They're a little bit happy. So, but I'm sure there are some critics of ours there too. So I'll take that. Then somebody, Vishwanath, is asking, how is the NEP 2020 incorporated? So as I mentioned to you, we've picked and chosen on NEP, and we think many things that they're saying we already have in place. Multidisciplinarity, liberal education, choice-based credit system, teacher training, connecting the dots, liberal arts, all of those, we've kind of put them a little bit together. There may be a few things here and there that we don't have, but we'll see. Then Ramkumar again asks, as you mentioned about parents, do you have experience for tough time for admissions and jobs for students? No, we don't have any problems neither on admission nor on jobs. In fact, the way things work out for our institution is 40% of our kids do graduate studies in India and abroad, and they go to some of the best places in the country and outside. Another 30% do go to family business or do startups. And another 30% look for jobs. And they all get the kind of jobs that they are looking for. So jobs is not a problem. In fact, ever since last 2 years, we've gone national with our admission. Our admission has become far easy, because what's happening is that kids across the country, and India is blessed with large number of kids, the kids across the country who discover us. There's a kid sitting somewhere in Kerala, there's somebody sitting in Meghalaya. They'll discover us and they say, oh, this is my kind of university. So we are very happy in getting these kind of kids raised as random ones here and there, one from every college, who actually fit this kind of process. And so we've not had difficulty. Mr. Chitnis asks, so who is the customer for universities? Is it students? Well, universities never think of themselves in terms of customers or clients, Customer is somebody who knows everything. This is a co-creation environment. So very honestly, if you think about stakeholders, the student is a stakeholder, parent is a stakeholder, employer is a stakeholder, the government is a stakeholder, in the society at large. But my biggest stakeholder in here really is the student. My job is to make sure that this kid gets as rich an environment to learn, and create that environment where this kid can jump 6 feet when she thinks she can only jump 3. And I have a feeling this is a long, difficult route for us, but it will, if we are able to succeed in this, I think we would have done our job. Bhaskar Rao asks, looks fine for deemed to be university autonomous institutions, but what about affiliated institutions under universities such as VTU? There enough scope for academic freedom? I think it's a very good question that Professor Rao is asking. And once again, I think NEP has a little bit of stuff on affiliation. And though I don't like the graded autonomy story, because in my mind, performance comes from autonomy, not otherwise. You can't ask people that if you perform, then I'll make you autonomous. Rarely does it happen that way. You have to become autonomous and then ask for them to perform. I think Yashpal committee also talked about lightening the load of the university and how to get rid of this affiliation process. And many institutions, many states are starting to think. So I absolutely agree. If the university is declaring a curriculum and the teacher's job is just to go teach within, I think there's a likelihood that some may not be motivated enough to do it. However, having said that, I think there's a scope for innovative teaching in whichever curriculum you pick up. So it's not so much about curriculum. The only challenge is that VTU would also give an exam across all its institutions which are catering to the least common denominator. And if you don't teach in that kind of sense, then your kids don't perform well. So you have to probably, the life for an affiliated institution is slightly tougher, because you have to prepare them for that exam, which may be very different from the way you teach. But I have a feeling there's a little bit of marriage that's highly possible there. But it's a very, very important and good question. Any specific methods used for imparting ethics and integrity? So, 3-4 things I will mention. Again, in our spirit of interdisciplinarity, we have courses on moral persuasion, which are taught by our professors from philosophy across the university, 2 engineers, 2 others, and present it in a manner where it is not right and wrong, but trying to understand what is the moral correct position of an individual and what's your moral compass. So that's how we run courses. And there's several courses that everybody will have to do. Second is we also have tried experiments, sometimes successfully, sometimes not successfully, in building a sense of integrity by running exams which are not invigilated. Most people don't want to do that, but we've done very bold experiments around it, and sometimes it has worked, and a few times it hasn't. We see cases of kids working with others, and my own, and sometimes it's a problem of how we set up examination, how we set up assignments. And at times, we've not been able to do it yet, but I'm having a conversation with my faculty colleagues saying that if the kids today, that they'll go and work together on an assignment, a copy, why don't you give them collective group assignment? Tell them specifically, here is a little bit open-ended question. You need to now work together with 3 other people. Let them speak and talk and learn and do something. If they can learn from each other, it's possible. Now, these experiments that we have to do, we have also all kinds of punitive measures, but I don't think that is working. So this is work in progress from on our part, and I don't have a very, very definitive answer for you. We talk a lot. Bring people onto the campus who are also a little bit, who talk about. Professor Kincha, you wanted to add something?
No, I didn't want to add anything. No, so thank you.
Okay. There's another question.
That's just a request actually at the end that would you like to nominate one question as question of the day?
I
just
think
to
you should
encourage
do it.
questions.
I think all these questions are very, very,
Good.
very important questions. I can't.
Sure. No problem, sir. Thank you. So thank you very much for answering all these questions. Actually, really gave us deep insight into these aspects. I'd like to hand over to our Vice Chancellor, sir. Thank you.
I'd like to hear Professor Kincha. I respect him, Professor Chadgopan, so much of what they've done and their thinking. I'd like to hear their little bit of perspective too on how should we go about addressing these issues.
Difficult question for me to answer. So how do you go about? I think that is the wrong question also to ask me, tell you very frankly. The number of experiments that you are doing and the number of bold steps that you have taken, I think is amazing for me. It's amazing for me. And I think you are very lucky, I should tell you. You are very, very lucky to get a management and a board of that type allowing you to do that experiments. I think
Yes.
that space also is very little in the country. In the country, that space is very, very limited space, both at the government level as well as at the private level. So I think, and you are very lucky, I think, for doing able to do this. Just wanted to ask you, have you, the new campus is ready or?
Yeah, new campus is ready. A campus is almost ready, but we have still some buildings under construction.
Yeah.
And we put a forest in the middle of the city, which will become the urban lung
Okay.
for the city. And it's nice. It's come together very nicely. Ours is an urban campus, as you know, with roads passing by, crisscrossing, but it adds to its flavor.
I have a question for myself, and I want your advice on that. You said about an expiry date for everybody. And I have that question for myself now.
No, I think it was little bit tongue in cheek more than anything else. I guess all of us have expiry dates in some ways. The meaning of, in my mind, the way I interpreted it was that one must stop, not stop with an experiment.
Yes, I got it.
Once that experiment is over, then we should improve on that experiment because there's an expiry date on that one. We'd like to hear your voice of wisdom. I think it's very crucial. And I'm sure I know every time I hear you or on many of the boards, I mean, they're always a new and interesting thing that you tell us. So
Thank you so much, sir. All the best. Keeping well. Keeping
yes,
well.
all right. Thank you. Yeah, all well.
Thank you, Pankaj. It was amazing as usual. And all that I would do is we should follow your steps. We'll keep watching you and follow your steps. Thank you.
Need your help and support, which you always do.
Thank you. So 90 of them holding on for 90 minutes nearly. I think you have set a new record, Pankaj.
Thanks. I see the comment from James. I didn't see him, but yeah, I absolutely agree with Professor Kincha's comment on the board. You know, we are, and I that's why I mentioned we are very fortunate. Very fortunate.
Sir, Vice Chancellor, sir, do you like
Yes,
to?
please. Please go ahead.
Sir, I have the greatest honor to propose the vote of thanks today. It was a very scholarly talk with a very enriching experience. I really wish every teacher, every student, parent, a governing member of all over India had an occasion to listen to such a talk. It was a really transformational talk. The issues that you raised right from the beginning to set the context, title of the book you studied, you don't even know. It's a very, very practical thing that we have seen all through. And definitely it is through all through. Degree is done. I'll just move on. I think it's a very, very contextual statement that you have made. Poor education is not education. I mean, I'm amazed at this statement. I think it's the thing that all of us teachers have to, really put some thought into this. A really dangerous situation, a technician turning out of a bright young person. I think the teachers have a lot to do in this direction. You touched upon a lot of very thought-provoking ideas like intrinsic value in diversity, educate for the examination. That's a very much followed in all through India now. It's a time to change. Find solutions contextual and grounded. And you touched upon, sir, the faculty is a big bottleneck. That I think it's a very philosophical question which we have to introspect. And you touched upon the 4 pillars of the university: learning centric, impart through interdisciplinary research, congregation of meritorious, high performance, and experimentation. Really, these are definitely the things that every university should start thinking about. Integrate the breadth and connect the dots. This was a very revelating question for us. Our Vice Chancellor also very frequently mentions about connecting the dots here. Learning to ask the right questions. And we are, this was really a new for us, your creation of the 4 studios that you said, and the students spending a month in the very beginning to, get value out of these studios. It was an amazing experiment. We touched upon the mandatory volunteerism, where people go to a slum or watch the policeman standing for 8 hours, understand his problems. I think these are all things that every student and even every citizen has to be aware of. Finally, sir, it was a very educative and it was a transformational talk. And I am very proud that I got an opportunity to propose this vote of thanks. I'm really honored. And I wish all of us have more and more occasions to listen to you on all these current and relevant topics. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Well, I invite everybody to come and visit us, and maybe you'll give us some more ideas on what new things we should do. So when it opens up, most welcome.
Wonderful, sir.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Sir, Vice Chancellor, sir, do you have some closing remarks?
Yeah, sir, I take this opportunity to thank you for how was my internet gone bad in between, but come on my phone now. I think the lecture was very interesting. I think each of the experiments that you have tried out has given inputs for people to think over and possibly try out some of those experiments which suit their requirements. Instead of, as you rightly pointed out, is not right on anybody's part to just copy and try to implement here. Probably we need to think over, debate on each one of them, and implement the things which suit our requirements and our conditions. I think those experiments will really succeed. I'm sure the experiment that you have tried out over there have given an opportunity for the students to think beyond the normal. I think wish all the best for your experiments, and possibly when we get an occasion to come to Ahmedabad University, we will come and visit and learn from your university and your model of education and try to implement some of those things to suit our requirements over here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.